You look at the tactical blueprints we have compiled for this deep dive, and honestly, it looks like a masterpiece on paper. I mean, we are opening up our internal Bernabeu notes today. The tactical diagrams, the financial ledgers, the raw dressing room realities we've been tracking all season.
Well, because we need to figure out what exactly Jose Mourinho is walking into.
Exactly, because if you actually understand the structural reality on the pitch right now, well, we are sitting on an absolute powder keg.
Oh, it is a complete disaster waiting to happen.
I mean, look at it. We are looking at a completely lopsided, top-heavy roster, a central midfield that lacks basic physical cohesion, a transfer strategy operating on sheer delusion, and, well, a behind-the-scenes contract renewal that might have just shattered the internal hierarchy of the entire club.
Yeah, and yet people think it's an easy job.
Well, my takeaway from poring over these documents is that with the sheer overwhelming volume of talent on this roster, this should be the easiest job in global football. You establish a basic shape, you let the attack dictate the geometry of the pitch, and you just dominate Europe.
See, that exact mindset, that assumption that overwhelming talent simply overrides structural integrity, that is exactly what is going to get this team pulled apart in the knockout stages.
I really don't see how.
Because it is surface-level thinking. I mean, you are looking at the names on the back of the shirts and completely ignoring the physical and mathematical reality of how those players interact when the ball turns over.
But the attack is so overwhelmingly good that the defensive transitions can just be managed with a basic shape.
You do not just establish a basic shape when the fundamental architecture of your team is compromised. We are looking at a tactical disaster. All the individual brilliance in the world cannot save a structure that is geometrically incapable of defending itself in transition.
Okay, but I completely disagree that the structure is broken, especially when you look at the mechanics of what the club just did in the attack.
You mean the transfer?
Yeah, let's actually look at the geometry you just mentioned.
Yeah.
We just dropped 140 million euros on Diomande.
Right, which is a massive fee.
It is, but for years, you and I have sat here and analyzed this agonizing tactical bottleneck where the entire team accumulates on the left wing. I mean, Vinicius wants the left half space. Mbappe wants to drift to the left to cut in on his right foot.
It was totally predictable. Opposing defenses would literally just tilt their entire defensive block to one side and suffocate the space.
Exactly. And now, by bringing in Diomande, we have finally naturalized the right wing. He keeps his boots on the chalk. He forces the opposing left back to stay wide.
Sure, he stretches a low block.
He does more than that. You look at that front line, Vinicius on the left, Mbappe central, Bellingham operating underneath, and Diomande stretching the right. That forces a back four to strike across the entire 68 meters of the pitch.
On paper.
No, in reality, you cannot double-team the left side anymore because Diomande will brutally punish you on the weak side. We have fixed the spacing issues.
You fix the spacing issues on a whiteboard while we have the ball.
It translates to the pitch, though.
Having a natural right winger who hugs the touchline is fantastic for the highlight reel. But what happens the very second that ball is intercepted?
The counterpress kicks in.
Geometry on a whiteboard is great until the opponent actually counters. When possession is lost, who is actually sprinting back to recover that space?
Well, the front line will initiate the press.
Because right now you have essentially named 4 players who operate as if they have diplomatic immunity from defensive transition.
They don't need to be defensive stoppers. If their initial counterpress is high enough, you just pin the opponent in their own third.
That is an absolute fantasy. You cannot play high-level European football with 4 passengers out of possession.
They aren't passengers, they just press high.
Let's break down the mechanics of a counterpress. To successfully win the ball back high up the pitch, you need immediate, coordinated physical exertion from your front line to cut off passing lanes. Let's be brutally honest about Mbappe right now.
Okay, let's talk about him.
He is 28 years old. The cement on his physical habits is dry. His fast-twitch muscle fibers are optimized for explosive attacking sprints, not 60-yard recovery runs to track a surging center midfielder.
But Mourinho can demand that work rate.
He is not going to suddenly transform into a defensive workhorse. Mourinho has a monumental, maybe impossible task of convincing these superstars to suffer without the ball.
I think Mourinho is exactly the guy to do it, though.
If Mourinho can somehow manage to take Mbappe from being statistically the worst defensive forward in Europe to just being in the bottom 20, you could call that a massive coaching victory.
Which would be enough.
Is that marginal improvement enough to survive against elite, highly structured transition teams? No. If 4 guys stay up, you are asking the remaining 6 outfield players to cover 7,000 square meters of grass. It is a structural nightmare.
But, I mean, the sheer volume of pressure they apply and the goals they produce will mathematically outweigh those defensive lapses. But your point about the remaining 6 players is exactly why we need to talk about what happens directly behind that front line.
Because there's a massive hole there.
Right. If those 4 forwards are going to stay high and dictate the attack, that naturally creates a massive spatial vacuum right in the middle of the pitch. And here is where I will concede that the tactical blueprints look terrifying.
Oh, they are beyond terrifying.
Like, the central midfield is an absolute mess right now.
It is a complete structural collapse.
Exactly. Look at the specific profiles we have trying to cover that space. I mean, CAMAVINGA is incredibly dynamic, but mechanically he is a ball carrier.
He vacates his zone constantly.
Yes, he gets the ball, he beats a man, and he surges forward, which inherently means he vacates his defensive zone. And then you have TCHOUAMÉNI, who is a brilliant destroyer.
But he gets left out to dry.
Because CAMAVINGA pushes up, and the front 4 don't drop back. So TCHOUAMÉNI is left completely isolated, covering the entire width of the midfield on his own.
And Valverde can't fix that single-handedly.
Right. Valverde is a physical marvel, but tactically he operates best as a vertical transition runner, not a metronome who sits and dictates the tempo of possession.
And Ceballos is simply occupying a roster spot at this point.
So you have this glaring void of lateral control and tempo setting in the center of the pitch, which is exactly why the internal discussions about dropping Bernardo Silva in there as a lone pivot makes so much sense to me.
Wait, what? Are you serious?
I am. You put a highly intelligent technical genius in the middle of the park to solve the creative void and dictate the geometry from deep.
Do you realize what you're asking Bernardo Silva to do mechanically? Playing him as a lone pivot is absolute tactical suicide.
Why? He organizes the build-up perfectly.
You want to concede 3 goals a game on the counter.
He has the elite spatial awareness to dictate the entire flow of the game, taking the ball directly from the center backs.
He organizes from the build-up when he has a physical shield protecting him. Let's explain what a lone pivot actually is.
It's the anchor role.
It means you are the single defensive anchor sitting right in front of the 2 center backs. When your fullbacks push high up the pitch to support the attack, that lone pivot is responsible for covering the entire horizontal width of the midfield defensively.
Bernardo has incredible stamina, though.
Bernardo Silva is a generational talent, a genius at finding pockets of space, turning and threading passes through tight lines. But look at the architecture of his entire career. He has always needed a physical enforcer right next to him.
Like who?
A Fernandinho or a Rodri. He needs someone to win the second balls, engage in the aerial duels, and plug the physical gaps so that he has the mental and spatial freedom to actually look up and be a genius.
Okay, but hear me out.
If you isolate Bernardo Silva as the lone pivot against high-pressing physical European teams, you are asking a purely technical player to act as a physical dam against the flood.
But Mourinho doesn't want Bernardo completely isolated anyway. That completely ignores Mourinho's entire managerial history. Look at his tactical DNA.
He's always had an enforcer.
Right. He has always relied on a physical anchor. TCHOUAMÉNI is the exact profile of player Mourinho loves. The blueprint is clearly to have TCHOUAMÉNI operate as the undisputed anchor.
So a double pivot.
He will sit deep, he will destroy the opponent's transition, and he will let Bernardo push slightly higher to be the organizer. It is a perfectly symbiotic relationship, the physical destroyer and the technical creator.
Okay, let's play that out on the actual pitch. TCHOUAMÉNI sits and anchors. Bernardo organizes ahead of him. That is 2 midfield spots completely locked up.
And it works beautifully.
Does it? Where exactly in this physical space do you fit Arda Güler? Because you and I both know the board expects their young investment to see heavy minutes.
Well, you rotate them.
Güler occupies the exact same right half spaces that Bernardo wants to operate in.
You rotate them based on the opponent, or you just shift the formation to accommodate both.
And how does that affect the back line? Because our defensive mapping shows the club is bringing in a 30-year-old Trent Alexander-Arnold to play right back in this exact scheme.
Trent is world-class on the ball.
Let's look at the cascading effect of these profiles. Trent is arguably the greatest passing fullback of his generation, but defensively, especially in one-on-one tracking, he requires a right-sided midfielder to constantly cover the space he leaves behind when he pushes up.
So someone drops in.
Who? You have an aging fullback who needs defensive cover, pushing up behind Diomande, who we already established isn't going to track back, leaving a massive highway on the right flank.
You adjust the defensive line to cover.
You are desperately trying to force jagged, incompatible pieces together. The profiles simply clash, And yet the board genuinely believes they could just patch these massive structural holes with their usual arrogance in the transfer market.
See, I don't think it's arrogance. It is just the reality of the club's status. Real Madrid is the apex predator of the football ecosystem.
That doesn't mean you can ignore logic.
It fundamentally alters how leverage works in the transfer market. Let's look at the situations right now with Boadi, the young breakout talent from France, and Rodri from Manchester City.
Two completely different situations.
Fans are looking at the calendar and stressing about timelines and missed targets, but the internal stance is actually correct. Both of those players should wait as long as the club needs them to.
Are you kidding me?
The strategy is simple. You wait for the call, and when the white shirt is offered, you take it.
You cannot possibly believe that strategy still applies uniformly across the board. You have to actually read the room and understand who you are negotiating with.
We are Real Madrid.
That mindset is exactly what is causing the delusion in our transfer strategy. You cannot treat a young kid playing in France like Boadi the exact same way you treat a seasoned champion who has won absolutely everything at Manchester City.
They both want to play here.
Boadi is looking for his big break. He needs to step up to a global stage. Rodri is a World Cup winner, a European champion, and mathematically the most impactful holding midfielder on the planet.
But it's still an upgrade for him.
Rodri has all the leverage. He does not need the step up. He can wait, he can stay at City and earn an absolute fortune, or he can easily pivot to a direct European rival who will gladly build their entire system around him tomorrow.
I understand the difference in career leverage, but if we are doing a deep dive into Rodri's profile, we have to acknowledge the medical reality.
Oh, please don't bring up the medical stuff.
There is a massive narrative right now, like you see it constantly dominate in the fan base discussions, that he's damaged goods.
It's nonsense.
People are looking at that severe injury from 2 years ago, and they are terrified. It's a lingering issue. From a financial perspective, committing astronomical wages to a guy who might have a chronic physical limitation when you are desperately trying to rebuild a dynamic midfield is a massive risk.
That narrative is exactly why we need to separate amateur fan fiction from professional sports science. It drives me completely crazy when that gets parroted as actual analysis.
It's a real concern, though.
Let's look at the biomechanics. A surgically repaired ACL, given 2 years of elite rehabilitation, is often structurally stronger than the original ligament.
But there's always a chance of re-injury.
The only real medical risk is muscular compensation in the surrounding areas during the first 12 months back. Rodri is 2 years removed from that. He has played thousands of high-intensity minutes since then without a single recurring structural failure.
You still have to factor it into the risk profile.
There's not a single serious executive, elite sporting director, or chief medical officer in this industry who looks at his biometric data and views him as damaged goods.
Well, the club is hesitant.
The club misread their leverage. They played a game of chicken with a player who didn't need them, and now they're using that old injury as a convenient smokescreen to justify missing out.
Missing out on Rodri hurts, I'll admit that.
But let's be very clear about something. Missing a target like Rodri is bad, but it is just a circumstantial setback. The real catastrophe, the actual internal disease that is going to sink this era, is already inside the house.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You are talking about the internal documents regarding the Vinicius renewal.
I am talking about the absolute bombshell that Vinicius has been handed a fully guaranteed, bulletproof 6-year contract.
Which he earned.
That right there is an absolute tragedy for the long-term structural health of the club. It is the equivalent of tying 200-kilogram anvils to your feet and throwing yourself into the sea.
Okay, stop right there, because I'm going to defend this move using the club's own financial logic, and frankly, it makes perfect sense.
There is no logic that justifies that length.
People are panicking about the raw numbers, but let's look at the mechanism of modern sports economics. I look at the NBA salary cap as the perfect analogy here.
We are playing basketball.
In the NBA, a superstar doesn't just get a flat, arbitrary number. They get a defined percentage of the team's total salary cap, which rises as league revenue rises. With global football inflation skyrocketing, giving Vinicius 50 million euros a year looks insane on paper, but it is entirely proportional to the revenue he generates.
You are completely missing the point.
The club's commercial ledgers show they are generating double that amount in global sponsorships, kit sales, and image rights directly tied to his specific brand. Mechanically, the contract pays for itself before he even steps onto the pitch.
The math doesn't matter here.
It is an economically viable, highly calculated move to secure your most marketable asset entirely through his physical prime. The math works perfectly.
The math works if we are running an accounting firm, but we are running a football team. It has absolutely nothing to do with the money.
How can it not be about the money?
The club generates billions. They can afford the 50 million euros. The crisis here isn't economic. It is entirely political. The currency we should be talking about isn't euros. It is authority.
Authority. How does paying a player fair market value strip authority?
Because of the length and the guarantees. By handing him a 6-year, bulletproof deal that makes him the highest paid, most untouchable asset in the history of the institution, the board has completely emasculated the coaching staff.
That's a massive overstatement.
You have just handed the absolute keys to the kingdom to one single player. Think about the mechanical reality of what happens next week. Jose Mourinho walks into that dressing room.
And he takes charge.
Mourinho's entire tactical philosophy demands total buy-in, absolute obedience to the defensive shape, and a willingness to suffer without the ball.
Right, and the players will follow him.
Let's say Mourinho sets up a low block to defend a 1-goal lead away in the Champions League. If Vinicius decides he doesn't feel like tracking his fullback and he breaks the defensive shape, what exactly is Mourinho going to do?
He benches him. He holds him accountable just like he would any other player.
You cannot bench a guy the board just invested over 300 million euros into over the next 6 years.
A manager has to make those calls.
If Mourinho benches him, the board will panic about their commercial investment depreciating on the sidelines. The player knows this. His agents know this. He is structurally untouchable.
I still think Mourinho can handle it.
By making that commitment, the board just stripped the manager of the only real weapon he has in a dressing room full of egos: consequence. If there is no threat of consequence, the manager's tactical instructions are just suggestions.
But a manager like Mourinho still sets the daily lineup. I mean, he has an aura. He commands the respect of the room by sheer force of personality.
Does he? Have we completely lost our institutional memory?
What do you mean?
Let me remind you of a chilling historical precedent from our own internal notes. Remember that manager we had not too long ago?
I think I know where you're going with this.
The one who went into the Classico, set up a brilliant tactical plan, completely neutralized the opponent, won the match convincingly, and then was out of a job almost immediately after.
Yeah, that was a crazy situation.
Why did that happen? It wasn't because of the results on the pitch. It was entirely because of locker room politics.
The power dynamic was definitely off.
It heavily favored the players over the coaching staff. The players didn't like the manager's strict methods. They bypassed the coaching staff, went directly to the board, flexed their leverage as untouchable assets, and the manager was gone.
It was a coup, essentially.
The internal tension we are looking at right now is identical, but amplified by a 300 million euro contract. Mourinho is walking into a dressing room where the players hold absolutely all the cards. They know they will outlast him.
Well, when you lay out the mechanics like that, the picture it paints is incredibly volatile. You start connecting the dots on this deep dive, and the reality is genuinely staggering.
It's terrifying if you're a fan.
We have engineered a 140 million euro fix on the right wing to solve our spacing geometry, but in doing so, we are relying on a front four, including an aging Mbappé, who mathematically cannot sustain a defensive transition.
They won't track back.
Right, and because they won't track back, we are leaving a massive spatial vacuum in the midfield, forcing players like TCHOUAMÉNI to cover an impossible amount of ground as a lone pivot.
Which is structural suicide.
Exactly, and we are desperately trying to force technically brilliant but physically incompatible pieces like Bernardo Silva or Trent Alexander-Arnold into a defensive structure that just doesn't suit their biomechanics.
Square pegs and round holes.
And on top of that, we're playing arrogant games in the transfer market, alienating the exact profiles we need because we misread our own leverage.
Like RODRI.
And hovering above every single one of these tactical issues is an untouchable star with a 6-year contract who holds the absolute political power in the club, effectively neutralizing Mourinho's authority before a single ball is even kicked.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And let's not forget the looming, very physical threat right across the league. That Polish striker from the rival team who has systematically dismantled our defensive lines in 7 of the last 8 Clásicos is still there, waiting to exploit these exact structural weaknesses.
The margins for error at this level are microscopic. One missed rotation, one lazy transition run, and elite teams will completely tear you apart. Yet we are operating institutionally, as if we are completely invincible just because we have famous names on the team sheet.
The structural reality is staring us right in the face. So, the ultimate question you have to ask yourself as we wrap up this analysis, with the locker room holding all the political power and the tactical structure fundamentally compromised from front to back, is Jose Mourinho really arriving to build a historic dynasty, or is he just the next manager waiting to be swallowed whole by a squad that refuses to be coached?
Honestly, it's a valid question.
Get in the comments right now and let us know exactly how you see this playing out. And listen, if you want to stay ahead of this unfolding drama, you need to follow Bernabeu Notes on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We are breaking down these tactical blueprints and locker room realities every single day.
Yeah, make sure you hit subscribe.
Hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
But honestly, if we line up with a lone pivot against a high-pressing team next match, you might want to just turn your phone off for the first 45 minutes. Save yourself the blood pressure spike and just check the damage at halftime.